Good morning. Sorry about the contributor thing. I thought I turned that off last time, but apparently not. So
Good morning.
good morning.
We'll wait a few minutes and see who can join. Let us know when you have a quorum.
I think we should be good to start in like one more minute or so.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good to get started whenever you'd like.
Okay, it looks like we have a quorum, so good morning, everybody. And I hope that you survived the deluge last night. And looks like we have some good weather for the next few days. And hopefully, and hope for best for all the people who had all that horrible flooding in Texas and some other places. So we have the Ainsley has put up the agenda for today. So our first item is, of course, welcome. And are there any people who I guess there are some people I can't see all the names unless I go look for all of them. But are there any folks who are new or just want to they're representing somebody else who care to just say something very quick about who you are? Or if you've been on before, that's okay. You don't have to say anything. But anybody else want to say anything? Okay. So for housekeeping, we have the approval and discussion of the minutes from June of 2025. So Ainsley, you want to put them up, and then we'll very quickly ask if there are any changes, any edits, and any suggestions before we accept them. No. I'm presuming that everybody got a copy and had at least a chance to look at it. Are there any suggestions or anything we left out or anything you want to emphasize? Anybody? Not hearing any suggestions, does anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? Anybody, please.
I'll accept them. I'll make a motion to accept them. This is
All right.
Andrea.
Thank you, Andrew. So if there are anybody that has any objections, say so right now. Otherwise, we will accept the minutes and then go on to our next item on the agenda. Okay, thank you. So Ainsley, do you want to talk about the distribution of the final interim report and the last couple of steps that went on that maybe people might not be aware of?
Yeah, of course. So the interim report was finally approved by the governor's office. It was reviewed. Nothing changed. It just, changed a little visually. It's available on the website. And it was also sent to the governor's office. It was sent to the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and the Department of Legislative Services. So I can send a link in the chat to that document.
Okay, and then of course it'll be in our Dropbox as well. So if anybody cares to look at it or whatever, it's our guideline for the next few months. The issues that were outlined in here, and we'll hear from our work groups about what they're going to do for the next steps on that. Okay. So Ainsley, also, do you want to remind people of the visits that are coming up very quickly now?
Yep, so the sign up for the visits is closed. We do have our first prison visit. It's going to be Monday, July 14th. We're going to MCTC and RCI. So if you've signed up for that and sent me all of your information, thank you for doing that. And then we have 2 other visits coming up. So one on July 29th on Tuesday for MCIW and JCI, and then on Wednesday for ECI, July 30th. So if you signed up for any of those visits and you haven't sent me your ID, your state ID, and whether or not you're going to bring a wired notebook or a non-wired notebook or pen, please send those to me so we can get you cleared through the security process as soon as possible.
Okay. And we were supposed to arrive there by 9 o'clock, right? At MCTC. Ainsley, how many people do we have on the, do you know offhand?
I think about 8 for each visit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, so that'll be good for people who haven't been able to visit these programs or you'll see, have firsthand, can talk to whoever we bump into it at the visit, and then that'll help us with the context for a lot of things we've been talking about. All right. So work group updates. Our chair for the work groups is Judith Lichtenberg. And so she's on today. Do you want to say a few words, Judith, before we have these chair of each of the subgroups do a quick report on what's happened?
I don't think I have anything to say. I just got back from vacation, so I'm a little less coherent than I might otherwise be, but I don't think I have any overarching comment. Okay. So Judy's always been helpful on getting this stuff together. She's been our chief editor on this stuff, so I really appreciate all the work she does. And also our link to a couple other groups, the Maryland Equitable Justice Coalition, and to Major, the advocacy group as well. So she's very important in this process, and I really appreciate everything she did, and very jealous about having had a trip that, and enjoying herself while the rest of us staying here in the hot weather. It was very hot where I was too, if that makes you feel any better.
Okay. So, all right. So we want to go first with, let's go with higher education first. Andrea, do you want to talk about the recommendations and what we're going forward on now? We've got the interim report behind us, so the format that we used. So go ahead.
Great. Yeah, thanks for putting that up, Ainsley. Yeah, so for higher education, we have these 5 priority areas. And in the report that was just submitted, they kind of appear like in a different order, but we met last month and talked about how we should prioritize them for the final or for the report for November. So these are our 5 areas that we're going to do a little bit more research on and try to offer a recommendation for the November report. So there's a few of us that are doing some of this research. To start with the statewide coordination, we're looking at a handful of states that have established statewide coalitions, is usually what they're called. And we're looking to see like when these were established, how, why, or how they're funded, how they kind of operate, and whether there was any legislative action to create them, because I think that might be a recommendation for this November report. So we're doing that work now. And, oftentimes when we talk about higher ed in prison, a lot of the programs kind of operate individually. And although we come together and share best practices and problem solve very often, we are still all individual schools with our own funding and some of our own policies, that because we're operating from different universities. So the statewide coalition is meant to kind of bring people together and share common practices and provide opportunities for other schools to kind of start up this work and, in this kind of shared space. But they're also, the purpose of some of the coalitions is also to bring in external funding, which is the point. If there was a statewide entity to bring in funding, from an external group, that entity would then be able to pass down money to the programs. And public safety is actually starting to do some of this work. I don't want to speak for Danielle, but some of this is happening already from with the help from public safety. But these statewide coalitions often have public safety as, a partner, as well as the systems, like, for example, in Maryland, we have the University System of Maryland. They also have the community colleges at the table and lots of different groups that are part of these coalitions, these statewide coalitions. So we're doing more research again on other states that have been doing this well for the past few years. Number 2 is funding. That's our second priority area. We're going to focus specifically about access to state tuition assistance or scholarships for incarcerated students. So when we submitted the report, we talked about funding for several different areas, but here, as we, focus on this November report, we're going to specifically do some research about state scholarships that incarcerated students have access to in other places. So we're going to look at other states and see how they've been doing this to kind of support whatever recommendation we put forward. Then we have space, technology, and incentives. Those are 3 areas that are also in this interim report. Hopefully these visits that are up and coming will help inform some of the ideas around utilizing space to expand higher ed programs. We've been talking about the past few months about Goucher's pilot of a trailer at, is it MCIW? I think, or MCIJ.
Yes, it's at MCIW.
MCIW. So yeah, we've been talking about that for the past few months. I think we've also shared that with this larger group. But the space recommendation, I'm not sure what that will be yet, but we're just exploring what other states are doing around using innovative approaches to tapping into different space at different facilities to expand program access. And again, Goucher is piloting this trailer. So perhaps that's, something that we will recommend as a recommendation going forward. Technology and incentives are 2 other areas that we'll also be doing a little bit more research on. And in the interim report, we talk about what's already happening in the state. Thank you to Danielle Cox for, leading those 2 initiatives, because there's been a lot of positive changes. So I'm not really sure where we're going to go with those 2 areas in terms of recommendations, because things are already happening there. So I know that we will highlight those advancements and yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but we are meeting at the end of July. We'll see how far we get with some of the research that we're doing right now on these areas. That's all I got. If anyone else in the group wants to share, if I missed anything, please feel free to unmute.
And if nobody wants to speak at this time, we're going to have a little discussion about this, open discussion. So feel free. Okay. Okay, there's nobody right now, so let's go on then to career technology and workforce development. Diana, are you with us today?
Diana's not here today.
Okay, is anybody else in the group that wants to talk about the career technology or and report for that? That's on the call. Maybe Ainsley, do you want to take a shot at it if nobody else is, and then I'll make some comments if there's anything else.
Yeah, of course. So our first priority that we discussed yesterday when we met was data collection and sharing in alignment to career outcomes. We know that the Department of Labor and the Department of Public Safety are working with the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center to look at the career outcomes of those who are in correctional education programs. We looked at some of their data in March, and so we're looking to incorporate that data, looking at, are people in correctional education programs in these industries as to when they're released? How can we better align the post-release outcomes to what is offered in the facilities? The second one is licensure. That's another thing that we're looking at is, are the programs inside, are you able to get a license if you have a criminal history when you're outside? So we're working on some of the research in that. The third priority was transitional instruction. One of the things that we saw from the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center data was that having that transitional programming was really key to obtaining employment post-release, especially when combined with other correctional education programming. So making sure that, those pins that were we didn't have a lot of transitional instructors, how can we solidify those pins so we can have more transitional instructors and more transitional programming. And the final thing that we talked about was barriers to employment. I think what we kind of left off with is the scope of this commission is really more about correctional education programming. There is another task force that is working on reentry. Collaborating with that task force and kind of leaving most of that up to them so we can focus more on these top 3 priorities. But keeping that in mind for the future, that there are still barriers to employment for returning citizens, and collaborating with that task force to see if this commission can help out with their work in any sort of way.
And that's an excellent point, because this commission can't do everything, and if there's items that we're working on that some other group is doing, it really is good for us to ally ourselves with them and support each other, so that they have some recommendations and some ideas and come into play with either any one of our 3 work groups. We can certainly incorporate them into our report that we do in November. So I'm sorry I couldn't have been at that meeting. One of my good friends had died, and there was a funeral service. So, anybody else want to say anything about career tech work group before we go on? Okay, so let's go to the ABGED special ed. We have Alyssa on. I'm seeing her; she's with us, and so I'd like her to make some comments on special ed that she's been working on. And I see that Mary Gable is here from the Maryland Department of Education too, so that's good. So Alyssa and Mary, if you want to say something too, go ahead, Alyssa.
Well, so I think the most pressing issue is for us to obtain a copy of the revised policies and procedures, which I've looked in the Dropbox. Ainsley, we don't have those, right? And so, Mary, that's what question as to whether you can help us get a copy of that. I think the commission was going to do an official request. I don't know if that happened. And the other issue is that there was a recent monitoring of the program by MSDE's special ed division, and that was supposed to be completed in May. And so the question is there a final report on the results of that monitoring? And so without those 2 pieces, that those are important pieces, obviously, right? Because the policies and procedures haven't been updated for many, many years. and MSD has to do cyclical monitoring. And so it's important for us to know what the most recent monitoring was. I did provide kind of to Stephen Ainsley kind of a few paragraphs of observations. Obviously, the most critical one is there's a very low number of students with disabilities who are passing the GED. I did note also, I don't have it quickly at hand, is that the information we got from the data request didn't match what was publicly reported. The numbers didn't match. And I can pinpoint those sites again, Ainsley, for you. I don't know. I think you have them, but I can pull them again. And one of the biggest questions is, what are the barriers to students with disabilities passing the GED, apart from the fact that they have a disability and are entitled to accommodations? And that raises the issue of, are there other paths available to students to obtain a diploma? The other piece that I noted was the high number of students with coded as OHI, other health impaired, which is generally an ADHD category. It's just something I noted, which was interesting, because those students who do have ADHD probably are not receiving any medication for that ADHD, which is another barrier to academic success. Those are some of the kind of highlighted kind of issues, but I think the primary to-dos are to get the policies and procedures and a report from MSD on the most recent monitoring.
Mary, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I will send an email now to Dr. Hickman and ask for both of those. So tell me specifically, besides policy and procedure, I'm just looking on their website to see, but I assume, Alyssa, that you've also looked there.
Yeah, I mean, we were told by labor, and I think somebody might be able to give us an update, that labor was working with MSDE to get the policies and procedures finalized and approved.
Okay.
And then the monitoring, I can't remember how we found that out, Steve.
And the monitoring was in the spring?
Yeah, it was supposed to be finished in May, and that was just part of the cyclical monitoring. You know how MSD monitors schools, special ed programs of school districts on a cycle. And John might be able to give us more.
Hey everybody. I do want to mention that the policies and procedures have been completed on our side. They're still going through the review and approval process and should be complete any day, if not already. I would certainly need to get that update from correctional ed director, as well as the results of the audit. I do believe we have our preliminary findings back. I don't think a final report has been put together. Again, as you mentioned before, if the commission were to make the request, we'll certainly provide the response to that. And if we don't have either one of those items, we'll be able to provide an ETA on when they should be available.
Yeah, we've discussed this quite a bit, and we haven't made a formal request, but I think it's time we do so. So, Alyssa, would you do me a favor and email Ainsley and I specifically what you want us to request, so I get that absolutely accurate, and I'm going to send that to Mary. Okay, and so we'll do that in the next few days. If you can get us a brief little thing about what to request, we'll send. I mean, we do have a right to this. It's public information, and so if it's available, we should be able to get a copy without any problem. And so I'd like to get this part of it done.
Agreed. I'm sure we'll be able to provide it.
Okay. Any other questions on special ed? I know the ADHD, I'm very cognizant of that. Just one of my kids, my son, had that, and if he didn't get his Adderall, boy, and so I can imagine somebody in prison with all the stuff going on, trying to study. We had one in the jail, in Howard County Jail. He didn't have his medication, and so we put him in a corner facing the wall with the computer in front of his face. There's no other distractions. He did quite well, and everybody helped, all the other students. But you can't just do that. The medication is so important. So
So what's interesting is that in the 23-24 academic year, 41% of the students with IEPs were coded as OHI.
hmm
And I'm sure 100% of those were for ADHD.
Okay.
I
And
mean, I
that's-
can't say for sure, obviously, but
What does OHI stand for?
it stands for other health impaired. And it's the category under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is like an umbrella category for kids who have a condition that impacts its alertness. But ADHD generally is falls within that umbrella category.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay, and then on the other items that are listed, in the report, we brought out school closures, completions and enrollment. We want to get more data on that. We have other items listed there. Youth transition from high school to GED. That's another item that actually it falls under special ed often. If somebody comes in and they're almost finished and then they have to go they're coming from youth centers and they almost have their high school diploma, and then they know they can't get it behind bars because the Department of Labor can't issue a high school diploma. Like some other states have school districts and they could continue it in some way and trade it and issue a high school diploma, but we can't. So that's another issue. There's the whole thing of alternative job assignments, which has to do with incentives and pay and stuff like that. And mandatory education, we have an issue of mandatory. The law says 240 calendar days. You have to go to school if you don't have a high school diploma and you're serving at least 18 months. But it does. But given closures or program availability or what have you, the clock is ticking and a lot of people aren't in school. So they might only get a fraction of that 240 days they're actually in school. So we're looking at this, making a recommendation that this become school days, not 240 school days, not 240 calendar days. So Ainsley, do you have that, put up that framework that we have asked each committee to do so the commission gets an idea how we're going to roll out these recommendations and prioritize them?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
Okay, so each work group goes through this. This is the calendar of what they do: June, July, August, and I think if you scroll down, here's the main thing. Here's the format. So as the committees work toward the annual report, which we're going to get out by November 15th, we want all the items that we would have a background, 1 or 2 paragraphs of current practice and a background on the issue, any law that's applicable. Description, very specific description, why this issue is a problem. And if there's best practices, which we've discovered, we're going to have some more research that we're going to be operating under and looking at and sharing with the commission. Best practices of the states that are relevant to these issues. Make a description of the recommendation that looks at current practice and how we might be able to solve it, and then have a success. How we're going to measure that? How do we know we're doing better? So we wanted some metrics to develop because it would be good if we recommend something and then 6 months later or a year later we want to see how it's doing. Well, what are we looking at that shows that we've made a change or that things have improved or didn't improve? So, and out of these recommendations, there may be some legislative recommendations that we put forth. And that's why we want to get everything done by November 15th so that the delegates on the commission and the commission itself can work with other legislators to create possible legislation to make these changes wherever they're applicable. Many of the changes will be policy and procedure. between the agencies involved, but there are some that could require legislation. So that's the format that every work group is working with it. Names, do you have any other comment on the procedures here we have for the work groups, so that everybody understands where we're going and how we're going to work over the next few months?
I don't have any big comments. June, July, or we're past June, but July, August, and September are going to be those really heavy work months, where we're doing research and, inviting people to speak on best practices, things like that. So we can get those recommendations really solid by September, October, November. The other thing I'll say is we also don't imagine that each work group is going to be able to accomplish all of those priorities within this time frame. This commission is extended until 2029, so we do have some breathing room. So, we're not going to solve all issues by November, but we're hopefully going to get some, like 1 or 2 or 3 solid recommendations for this final report.
As Ainsley mentioned, we've been extended to 2029, so we're going to do as much as we can. And so those that will hold those others as future activities that we can't, but the ones we feel good about, we're going to go forward. I know there's going to be some special ed recommendations possibly and some others, but right now we don't need to talk specifically about that. So any comments on the work group? Is this a good guideline? Do we need to do anything else? I mean, I think we've got excellent leadership. Each one of the groups is going along very nicely, and they know their items, and they're doing the best they can to work as quickly as possible. So, any suggestions you may have on how to help with the work would be just wonderful. If you want to make any of them now, or you see something as we go along, just say, "Wait, we can do this better in another way," and make your suggestion. Okay. All right. So let's put the agenda back up. And so that's the update on the work group priorities. So are there any questions from anybody on the commission right now about what we're doing with the work groups? Any general comments before we go to our next item? Nobody's got any questions or suggestions? So, okay. The next item, discussion on the central purpose of the commission. In the report that we turned in, the interim report, we talked about future activities, and one of them was looking at best practices. That the name of our commission is the Prison Education Delivery System Reform Commission. And so the idea of the whole legislation was that we really look to see if the way we've got the hierarchy between agencies set up is the best model. And there is some research. Ainsley and some other people have suggested some things. We've had some conversations with some people. There is some research and recommendations by some folks out there about what the best models are. So we are going to have presentations. And so the next meeting, which would be in August, we're going to have Lois Davis from the RAND Corporation, who's done all the recidivism research and is one of the leading authorities on the impact of correctional education, talk about what she believes are the best practices that affect the work we're doing, including the structure of our agencies. And in September, we're going to have the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, which has done a good amount of research. They talking about how to make prison education more effective. And Angie and I have had a meeting with them, and they've developed some really good frameworks for looking at each state. And they have some recommendations to share with the commission on agency configuration. So some of it has to do with, is the school district better? A lot of states, a good number of states have a school district model. Some have an Department of Education model, which we did have in Maryland up until 2007. So we want to have an open discussion with that. And I hope people will take this as a positive thing. Like I said before, we're not aiming to get rid of anybody, or we're aiming to provide a better system that things work faster. I mean, an analogy is, you see the discussion on TV about, could people have responded better to the flooding in Texas? Now we're hearing, well, the sirens didn't work. They didn't have this. FEMA is now handicapped because they have to get all these approvals, so they're 3 days late with come. I mean, any kind of system like we have here with education, there's probably ways we can do things quicker and better and in a more cooperative way. The whole idea being that we're developing a plan for people behind bars who don't have enough education to get that to them, and to get appropriate stuff to them, get them licensed, get them a high school diploma, get them a certificate, etc. And even beyond that, when they get out, where the Department of Labor does most of that work, putting tools in their hands, hopefully, looking at licensure and all that. What is the best way to do this, and to make an individual plan for each person work? So I have some views on it, and I share that with individuals, and I want the commission members to look at the research and the things we're going to look at in the next couple of months, to see what they think. And then hopefully I'd like to have a recommendation of this group by the end for this November meeting. And so so what I'm saying basically is, we're, in addition to all the issues and recommendations that the 3 work groups have come up with, we want to also take a good look at the overall structure of how education is delivered by the several agencies that are involved. Okay, so I'll open that up for discussion, for any comments and thoughts. So please let me know what you think about how we're going with this, and your ideas. I know some people have some feelings about this and some thoughts and whatever, so please feel free to share them. Angel, has anybody raised hands? I don't have everybody's picture up here. Nobody has any comments? Okay. So I hope that will generate some real discussion when we have our next presentations, because it's really important that we take a good look at overall what we're doing and how it can work better. So,
hey, Steve, I think everything is pretty much laid out, and people really agree. Thank you and Ainsley. Everybody been taking the time laying everything out. So there's no questions. It's already laid out, and everybody's on board with it. So if it was a problem, believe me, somebody would be saying something.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good comment. I appreciate that, Gordon, because I mean, you certainly personally experienced the positives and the negatives with programs, and you knew, what can happen if things disappear, resources disappear, and all that. So
I'm just wondering, if we have to submit the final report by November 15th, have we worked backwards to, when we need to get, a final draft and, various things before that, so that the actual report can go out by November 15th?
well, I think, yes, that's a good point, Judith. And I want to call it the annual report, because our final report would be in 2029,
Right.
So, and we talked about changing the language and the delegate
We're
amplitude.
supposed to submit a report every year before then?
We're going to go with the same structure unless the commission decides to do it differently. We'll have a 6-month report again, interim report, next year, and then another annual report as we work through issues, because we may go in depth on some of these issues. And it could be that legislation appears that changes the commission's role. I don't know. I mean, I can't see in that crystal ball, and I frankly don't have any idea what that would happen, but we've had a little change already with the lengthening of the commission. But yeah, I think by November 1st, we ought to have a draft. And you know that if we put it out November 15th, it's going to go through some steps in the governor's office before it's final. That doesn't mean it didn't change anything with our interim report, but you know, before it gets totally official, we want to, if we have it out by November 15th, then we can work with any legislators on proposing if there's a legislative changes. And I'll just give just throw out the whole thing about mandatory education as an item that could require legislation. I'd like to see legislated that could change it from calendar to school days. And whether or not the legislature approves it, I want to see that personally as a recommendation, and others as we develop them. November 1st, I think, would be a good deadline for having a draft, so that by the 15th, you get a chance to massage it with your great editing skills and get it into the right shape. So that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay,
We have Delegate Simpson has her hand up.
go ahead, please, Delegate.
The only thing about a November 1st is typically if you wanted legislation or bills, or you're recommending such, that is the deadline for filing early. Not that anybody wants to, but just in case you did, you would be beyond that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's realistically to do our work. I mean, maybe I think before November 1st, we'll have a lot of ideas that we maybe haven't finalized, and somebody might want to run with them. You or any of the other delegates on the commission, or for that matter, Delegate Ampry, might want to then submit that. So take ideas we've written up and use them for legislation, even though the commission hasn't come out with a report yet. That the delegates don't have to rely on the commission to have its final stuff together. But does that help?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just throwing that out there. That's fine.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we can still make recommendations that then are picked up, and there, I guess what, January 8th, I had that in my mind as the deadline to get it up, absolute deadline, get any legislative proposals in.
Oh yeah, it's 10 days after you start the General Assembly, that we start. So I mean, it's not too late. I'm just saying for early.
Right. Yeah, and I want to make sure that we all do sufficient research on everything, and we all come together before we make any recommendations, and we get behind it with the majority of the commission. And if we can do it, if we get some of these items together before November 1st, then somebody can run with them before we finish our report, if they want. Okay. But I appreciate your guidance and the other delegates on our commission on all this process. And hopefully, that this stuff, I think with 3 delegates on the commission, and if you all agree on some legislation, that's a good start to get lots of other people in line. My only concern is we don't have a senator on the commission, but we need to start working on that, to somebody who we can share our recommendations with, because it's going to have to go over to the Senate, whatever we do. So any suggestions you might have, Delegate Simpson, or the other Ampry and Pasteur delegates, that would be great, on how we might approach somebody in the Senate to co-sponsor anything that comes up.
I think all 3 of us have really good relationships with senators that we could find to cross-file.
Great.
I haven't had an issue with finding cross-files.
I like that. That's terrific. That you're optimistic that we can do that. Any other comments? I've had some private conversations with some of you folks, and so whenever, I'm sure, it's up to you whether you want to share your thoughts or anything else. But appreciate everybody's work, and how many people have worked behind the scenes on these work groups and sending emails and finding research and sharing it. And particularly, I want to thank Ainsley for keeping us organized. So many kudos to her and she's been doing a terrific job. So, okay. All right. Well, we're what 10 to, this is one of our faster meetings. It's 45 minutes. And so are there any other items people want to bring up that are related? Or just share something that's important that you found out that you would like other people to know? Go ahead, and now's your time to say something, please. Alyssa?
Yeah, I know that we talked about some point getting student or inmate feedback. I may not be, Ainsley, we did talk about this at some point, did we? I was just wondering, has that issue, has there been any decision about how that might happen? How students could be, or inmates could be surveyed, or particularly for, students with disabilities, it's really kind of a good way for students, to get the feedback of whether they feel like their needs are being met, or whether they can even feel like they can do it, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I cannot just interject for 1 second. I just want to be mindful of human-centered language on this call. There has an article out around human-centered language when we're referring to students, particularly those incarcerated inside. Right now, there's work being done to remove certain languages around like inmate. They're considered very hurtful and derogatory terms in this space. So what we preferably like to use when we're referencing those that are incarcerated is incarcerated people, and those that are incarcerated. So I just really feel
Sure. Now I tend to use students because I'm so that's my I was just
and I'm more than happy to share the article because
Sure.
there's some other suggested
Absolutely.
languages that we can use when referring to people, students that are incarcerated. So I do apologize for interrupting the meeting.
No, that's great. No, that's great. I mean, I think my comment is also trying to be student centered so that we get some feedback from those who are directly impacted by this issue. And I just didn't know whether there's some best practices on how to do that, whether that's already been done before. I just didn't want to lose that thread.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely intend to talk to the students while we're inside on these visits to the correctional institutions, but I think that, we should be surveying students, talking to them more about what they would like to see from programs. So that's definitely something that we can take up.
Great, thank you.
We have several people who have been in the system on the commission, and I wonder what they think is the best way to do that. How can we from the outside go in and get information from the students and that they will answer, that they'll feel free to answer anybody. What's the best way? Gordon?
I think, well, first let me ask this. We're still straight for the site visit on Monday. No changes. Daniel, any changes with that? We're good?
No, we're good with that.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. I think the best way to do that is through the classes or through the instructors that are teaching.
So there is a process for that.
Yeah, I think, they could go in and just pass out something or ask what, and that's the best way to do
Actually,
it.
no, you can't do that.
Uh-oh.
Any sort of survey that is going to be given out to the population inside, you have to take, and it's got to be pre-approved. If it's going to be public centered out, because we have to make sure that, especially if that names are not on there, people are cleared to be able to have outside there's different things, and it's got to go through our policy division to make sure, because it is technically a survey and that's technically research. So that goes through our research division. So yeah.
Let's make that an activity. Let's put that on our list of things to do. And Danielle, since there are policies and procedures for that, if you could share that let it send it to us and we'll share it with everybody. And then we can think about how to go about doing that. I mean, I know we've done it before. I was involved with stuff like that when I worked for the state in the year 2000. We did research on recidivism, and we had hundreds of students participate in Maryland,
Yeah,
Ohio, and
you just have to
Minnesota.
create the actual survey, the assessment or whatever you're going to do. And then you have to go to the research. There's a website for DPSCS for the research division where you have to upload that. There's an application that you have to do. It's a whole process. It's quite a lengthy process. I don't know if we can get that shortened by just getting the actual tool and instrument approved and then having that sent out via the tablets. But that's something I would need the tool would need to be created first.
Okay.
That is how then we can figure out how to go about then getting it to them.
All right, I'd like to nominate, I'm looking at faces I can see on my screen. I see Ann and Gordon. I know John Griffith's on the call on this in the background somewhere, and whoever else that I can't see that's been incarcerated in Maryland or wherever, participate with that, help us put that tool together, and then Danielle help us figure out how to do it. And it may be that some of us go into prison and actually do it with teachers, or I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes. And I'll certainly volunteer my time to do that. So let's make that an official activity, and it certainly is important because that's the target of all these folks who are in school, and if they can't have a voice, let us know what they feel about what's happening to them. That's a big omission. So thank you. I really appreciate that, Alyssa, for bringing it up, and Gordon. All right. Any other comments on that? And you have, I think.
Yeah, I think that actually post-release is better. And not saying that one has to be in place of the other, but I think that on the inside, and I would have been somebody who would not have answered your survey while I was on the inside out of fear that it would have harmed my relationships with staff if I answered it honestly. You know what I mean? If I had an issue with something that was going on. So in all reality, I would be one, afraid that people would silence themselves just out of fear, and two, afraid that people might actually have some type of retribution depending on what administration was there. And again, that during my incarceration, I would have been far more open with Margaret Chippendale's administration than the administration that followed her administration, who's no longer there. And I'm blanking on the name right now. So that is an issue. The people that you're going to want to hear where there's a problem are probably people who are going to be too scared to speak while they're on the inside or until they're transferred to a more favorable institution. And that's kind of the reality that we're living in. Post-release, asking people to kind of debrief when they come home, which I feel like most people, and not all, some people do to their expiration, but it's incredibly rare. Most people end up at a DPP intake office. And I don't mean the DPP offices that you go to all the time, but a DPP intake office where you have to report as soon as you get out to be assigned to your agent. Almost everybody has to show up to one of them when they go home the next day. If you would give them something at that time that they could take and fill out online or through the mail, whether they, if they want to or not, it's up to them. It's voluntary. But if you could hit them at that point of engagement at that DPP intake office, you would get people who are exiting the system immediately. And you get them the day after they exited the system, the next business day, and you'd give them the option to provide you with information that they otherwise would have been too afraid to provide you with. So I think that's a viable alternative or concurrent effort.
And that actually will save you the hassle of having to go through any sort of approval process to actually have the instrument approved and be used behind the fence. And you would not, and also having people put their names and follow-up contact and all that kind of stuff, because you can't do that with stuff being used behind the fence. So, and we often see that is that people don't want to take and fill out a lot of that stuff while they're currently incarcerated. But we get a lot of involvement post-release. So I think Ann's got a huge point with that.
Well, let's I think Danielle is key to the group, Ann, Gordon, John, whoever else might want to be involved with it. So let's put out an email to the whole commission and say, we'll set up a meeting, our first meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks about the issue of a survey. It's just to get it, so we get it started. Otherwise, it'll be like those other things that gets pushed to the end of the list of things we do. So I like to, since everybody jumped in on this one and thinking it's an important thing to do, let's make it happen quickly and get it started. Okay. So Ainsley and I'll talk about that and get back to everybody. So Alyssa, thank you for, woke everybody up, Alyssa. Everybody's so quiet today.
And I do wonder if, sorry, I do wonder in talking with other states when you all were having those conversations about other programs, whether there are any other contacts or best practices that others have used that can be examples or kind of guide us.
Yeah, I think when we talk to Lois Davis and to these folks from Mackinac, they've had communications with, and I wonder how many of the research efforts they were involved with directly involved students and how they did that. That would be very helpful. I know what Ann is saying about, you don't, if you make too much noise, they might have some retribution, and that's unfortunate. But people behind bars don't have as many rights, and sometimes they suffer for it, unfortunately, if they rattle the cage too much, so to speak. But on the other hand, I'm really curious at how effective they feel instruction is, or that, and all that, but we can go one step at a time. So, okay. Any other, that was great. Any other comments or suggestions from folks who are on the call today? Is Delegate Pastor on the call? Or is Riley in a place for her?
They're not today.
Okay. We've had she's been working very hard behind the scenes, so she's probably got some kind of a conflict today, but so she's got a lot of good ideas but we can, those will come up as we go forward. So, okay. So we're approaching 1 hour, although we have put out an hour and a half for this Zoom, but let's entertain any other questions or concerns that you may have. Anybody? Anybody else's hand is up?
No, but I just added some stuff in there, Ainsley, in the chat about how we are currently not doing surveys of incarcerated population due to the money that incurs for that process. And I put a link to the application, but it takes months to get approved.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? What does our agenda look like? I think, are we at the end here?
Yep, that was the last item.
Well, I really think this commission has done a lot of work, and folks in the governor's office we're very happy with the report and the amount that we did in less than a year's time, really. And looking forward to, having an annual report that takes us, several steps forward and maybe some actions that are needed that we all back and want to see happen. So I thank you for all your hard work, and looking forward to the visits on Monday and then later in the month. I think that will be, the one in Hagerstown is not too far. It's an hour. Does anybody want to carpool, by the way? You're coming out of Baltimore. I'm in Columbia. Angie's going to drive out on her own. I could meet people there's a car park at Route 70 and 32. A lot of people park there and go to work or whatever, various places, but there's a free car park. And I'd be happy to meet and travel with a couple of people because there's gas money that's involved with that. So if anybody want to meet, maybe it's a little short of time, but if you want to email to me or whatever, I'd be happy to meet folks. I've got room for 2 or 3 in my car. If nobody wants it, I'll take my truck instead. But I have a RAV that'll be comfortable for a ride. So
I was actually gonna I live in Mount Airy, right off of 70, which there's a park and ride there.
Right.
If anybody wants to even meet me, and I can drive up, so it's up to you guys.
Well, let's communicate. That'd be good.
Okay.
I'm familiar with getting off there because my dentist is out in Mount Airy.
Okay.
And so you go north on when you get off at Mount Airy, or south?
Well, when you get off at the exit 68, you'll bear right, and it's about less than a half mile down on the left, past McDonald's and Starbucks and stuff. It's
Not too far from Tractor Supply and all that stuff, right?
it's before all that.
Before all that.
It might be
Okay.
helpful to have a list of the various people who are going on the various visits. Ainsley, is that possible?
Well, the
I'm
first
yes.
one's the one
I-
they have confirmed yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that list out, and we can coordinate carpool. I also just wanted to say something. John Griffin was not able to join because of technical difficulties, but he said that he wanted to echo what Anne said about post-release, and he wanted to add that incarcerated individuals would be willing to speak if allowed to do so in office with the visitors, similar to a case management meeting. He's done that before, and it requires cooperation from the institution's education principal and the education officer in charge. So
Yeah.
that's from him.
That's not happening right with this commission.
But do you have the list of Monday's visitors? I think we have 8 people.
Yeah, I can send that list.
But can you just say who they are right now?
I don't have it on hand, but
Okay.
I
All
can
right.
definitely send it to
So
you.
why don't we send a note out to Danielle, I can meet you in Mount Airy.
Okay.
And if anybody else wants to meet, so Danielle, let's you and I connect.
All right. And just kind of give a little bit more information about Monday's thing. So yes, we're meeting at 9 a.m. at MCTC, so we can get in and get started at 10 a.m., the actual tour at 10. Classes will be in session during that time period. But we are not sure what will happen at RCI because there's been a lot of shutdowns there, and we're not quite sure where we'll be at staffing wise on Monday for RCI. The classes will actually be in session, but we will be able to at least go around. For the MCTC, yes, we can speak to the incarcerated population who are students, but we can't take names, comments. This person said this, record anything like that. But yes, you could definitely ask them questions and stuff like that. That is not a problem. That's not an issue. What we did not get pre-approved or anything in advance is pulling out of any students to speak to the commission on a more, one-on-one or group basis. But we can definitely do it where we're walking through the classes and speaking to them about services that are being provided. That is fine.
So when you get to MCTC, it's spread out a little bit. So have comfortable walking shoes, because if we go back to the vocation areas, they're back farther in the institution. I hope we'll get a chance to see those.
Yeah, we're gonna do everything.
Now let's hope for cooler weather. So hope we don't get a blistering hot 95, 100 degree day.
Might be good to get and see what the people inside are living through on a daily basis.
Yes. So, okay. So anyway, so let's, if Ainsley's going to send a note out to everybody who's going Monday, and then if you can indicate you want a carpool, and let's try to figure that out. I'm going to meet Danielle Mount Airy at the Park and Go, whatever they call it.
Yep. And I can take 2 more people if anybody wants to come. So Steve,
What kind of vehicle do you have?
well, it depends on which car I take. I've got a Tesla and a Jeep Wrangler. So depending on who all's coming, how many people will be depending on which car I take. But probably
Well, if you haven't been in a Tesla, it's an experience. I've driven one for a week once, and so it's an opportunity to ride in a rocket.
So if we gotta be there at 9, so Steve, if you want to meet about 8 o'clock.
Yes,
Okay.
and dress casually. I mean, you don't have to wear a necktie or anything like that.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
Casual business.
And just remember, do not bring in just your keys, and keep everything in the car, basically, unless you have like an unbound notebook and a pen and your keys, obviously. But everything else just keep locked up in the car.
Do you check your keys when you come in?
No, usually it just goes through the front and you can keep them in your pockets.
And what about your wallet and stuff like that?
You can bring that in as long because you're going to need your ID and everything. So that is fine, unless you just want to bring your ID in and leave the wallet locked up in your car. So that's up to you. But just don't bring in anything more than like 20, 30 bucks, something like that, with you. So
Okay.
cash wise. So, but just your ID and keys. And then if you're bringing a notebook and pen, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes, and then just make sure women no like leggings or form-fitting, low-cut stuff, things like that. Short dresses, no
Sheer.
shorts. What was that, Judith?
I said sheer tops.
Yes, things sheer. Yeah, nothing too short.
Underwire bras. Don't forget the no
Underwire
underwire bras.
That is actually no longer a thing. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I knew of Becky getting turned away after driving 3 hours out to North Branch.
Yeah, no. Well, North Branch is a higher. It's the Supermax, so that's a little different. WCI North Branch, but everywhere else, yeah, that's not an issue.
Okay.
Okay.
I
But
promise.
if you want to be on the safe side and not have to have any worries, yes, don't wear one.
I
But
will
it's
not. I will not wear a bra with wire. I promise.
I actually just found out that was taken off the dress code like about a year or so ago.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, good. So on that humorous note, we will. Unless there's any last minute comment, I'll ask to adjourn the meeting. We're going to communicate with the folks who are back and forth for Monday, but other than that, we'll go forward with everything. So does anybody want to recommend that we adjourn the meeting? Anybody can do it. Go ahead.
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Terrific. Okay, so thank you again, and our next meeting will be in August, the first Thursday in August. I don't know what that date is.
August 7th.
August 7th. But in the meantime, we've got lots of work groups meeting, and I look forward to talking with all of you. So have a great time. Keep cool. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.